Hey, what's up everyone? Tedrick85 here, and today I'm going to be talking about Chapter 4 of Book 1 of The Legend of Korra, titled The Voice in the Night. This episode is one of my favorites in Book 1, just simply because this is the first episode we get to see Asami, which, for those of you that have already seen the entirety of the series, knows that she's a pretty big deal, and I don't know, if I for one, not only is she my favorite non-bender in this series, she could possibly be my favorite non-bender of the entire Avatar franchise. Even more so than Sokka, and I adore him. But I've always liked Asami in that, and I never really bought into the whole she's a double agent type thing or she's an equalist in that. But I don't want to get too far ahead of myself before I get into the later episodes. But I just wanted to say right off the bat, I've always been an Asami fan, and I probably always will be because I think she's a pretty cool character in that. But I'll talk about more about her in a bit. But I'm going to talk about the start of this episode, which I think is important too, which is you get to see Korra having these nightmares about Amon and the Equalists and that, which I think if I was in her shoes, I think I'd have nightmares too because that was pretty. Imagine being a bender, so much the Avatar, seeing what Amon did on that stage and that take away lightning bolt Zolt's bending like that. I'd be a little bit freaked out too, and there's a little bit of an uneasiness in that. And here she ends up having this nightmare where these Equalists come and attack her, and Amon comes and takes away her bending and that, to which she realizes it's a dream and that, but you can tell this whole thing is definitely affecting her. And, but yeah, like I said in the last video, I think she's really beginning to understand just how dangerous things are getting in the city and that, and how much of a threat Amon is to pretty much the balance of everything in Republic City and that. So, not only does she have to worry about herself and the rest of the Benders, but she kind of has to worry about the rest of the city too. Because, non-benders are looking for their voice in the city, as well as the benders themselves have to protect themselves from getting their bending taken away or blocked and that. So it creates for a pretty dicey situation, which was being addressed at the Republic City Council and that. And this is also where we get to meet Councilman Tarlock, which hails from the Northern Water Tribe. Or is it the no? No, I'm wrong. I think he's from the Southern Water Tribe. Come to think of it, but either way, he's a waterbender in that, and here he ends up proposing a task force to battle Amon and his Equalists, to which Tenzin right off the bat disagrees and would fear that it would only make things worse than what's already are. Tarlock then continues to justify his plan by saying that this situation is similar to how a bloodbender named Yukon was terrorizing the public city back when Avatar Aang was still alive, which Tenzin, not only did he disapprove of this to begin with, but he ends up getting upset because he felt insulted that Turlock was trying to juxtapose himself to be in Aang's position when he was dealing with Yukon. And needless to say, I think Tenzin took it a little bit personally when Turlock made that comparison and that analogy in that, which I can understand where he's coming from, definitely, because Tenzin, I assume, was a kid when all this happened, and he probably experienced that firsthand, what his dad had to go through and that. But yeah, it's definitely set for a heated debate in that. But despite Tenzin disagreeing with Turlock's plan for a task force, the council votes in favor of it, and it ends up going through in that. And we get to see later on where Korra is practicing her airbending forms while listening to the radio, when all of a sudden Amon has this message on the radio saying how Republic City has declared him public enemy number one, and that he continues to be defiant on his message too by saying that the Equalists are only getting stronger and they're growing with numbers and that, and the time of vendors is coming to an end and that. And once again, you get to see Korra being visibly shaken by this. And I think that shot where it's just her two eyes and the bead of sweat coming down, I think that spoke volumes, just how freaked out she is by Amon and that. And you can tell where she was like in the first two episodes, she was really wanted to get in there with her, hit the ground running, being the Avatar and fulfilling her duties and that. But you almost get a sense from Korra where she's kind of like, oh crap, what did I get myself into? While she still wants to fulfill her duties at the Avatar, she knows that the task ahead of her is really, really big, and that she, like I said, not to sound like a broken record, but I think she's really starting to understand the gravity of the situation. And but yeah, you can tell where she's definitely taken aback by Amon's message in that, and she knows that he's not kidding around, and he's gonna get his message across one way or another in that. But I'm gonna go ahead and talk about Asami in that, which we see Asami almost crashing into Mako, which Mako is about ready to rip into her, only to find out that she is a woman in that, and not only is she a woman, but she's a pretty good-looking one too. And you see Mako mumbling like, he's trying to collect himself while she's beating herself up over almost hitting him with her moped and that, and it's interesting because she recognizes him from playing for the Fire Ferrets, and here she gets kind of starstruck, which I think is kind of cute and that, and Mako being the macho guy type, he's like, oh, it's nothing and that, and here Asami felt really bad afterwards, knowing that Mako is a professional pro bender and that, and she proposes that to make things up, she invites him over to dinner, and she invites him to this place called Kwang's Cuisine, which is a really ritzy type restaurant. And Mako wants to go, but he tells her that he really doesn't have any fancy clothing and that. But Asami tells him to just show up anyway, and that she'll take care of everything for him and that. But they got a date set up and that, and we got to see how those two met, which I think is, back then I was kind of, but looking back now, I thought it was kind of clever that they were able to meet each other like that, even though I never shipped them. But thought it was pretty cool seeing Asami and that. We get to see a different side of Mako too, being flustered by a woman and that. So, and while this is happening, Turlock interrupts Tenzin's dinner and that, and he ends up acquainting himself with Korra. And he tries to butter her up in that, saying how her abilities are and how much the world needs her and that. And the reason for this, of course, is because he wants her to be a part of his task force. But to everyone's surprise, Korra ends up refusing him in that. Even Tenzin was a bit surprised by this. But you can tell where he's definitely relieved in that, because he was against this whole task force idea to begin with in that. So, but yeah, we get to actually see Korra actually refuse to do something that involves fighting in that, and she says that she doesn't want to join the task force because she wants to focus on her avatar training, which I think is partially true, but we come to find out later in this episode, and which we already knew, she's terrified of Amon and the Equalists and that, and I can't really say terrified. I think that's too strong of a word, but she definitely has that fear in the back of her mind of what if something goes wrong and that Amon can easily take away her bending and that. So here and Turlock doesn't give up in it, which he says he doesn't give up, but throughout the episode he gives her like these real extravagant gifts, including a car, which ends up being at the Air Temple Island and that, which Tenzin ends up approaching her and asks her if she's not joining the task force for the right reasons and that, and she tells him that she wants to focus on her training for airbending and that, and her avatar duties and that, in which Tenzin goes on by saying that he lets Korra know that anytime that she wants to talk to him, that she can and that, and he ends up telling her that it's okay to be a little bit fearful of the situation in that, because it is rather intense in that, and of course Korra being stubborn in that, she insists that she's not afraid in that, but you can tell she definitely is, but going back to Mako and Asami and that, at the cuisine, she ends up telling Mako how much of a fan she is of pro bending, and she said that she hasn't missed a game in that, and the waiter comes by and gives Asami the check in that, and here Mako ends up asking her if she's related to Hiroshi Sato, which is the guy that's invented the automobiles and head of Future Industries and that, and she ends up saying she is in that, and she asks Mako if she wants to meet him in that, and he goes sure, and here he ends up meeting Hiroshi in that, and he tells Mako how he started off poor too, until he started the idea of the automobile, and he met someone who was able to make his dream a reality and bring his ideas to life. And and Asami says, "Oh, stop bragging, Dad." And then he ends up telling Mako, which is really good news for Mako and Korra and Bolin, that he will sponsor the fire ferrets throughout the tournaments after Asami told him about his situation. And Mako, not only was he surprised by this, but he was also delighted in that because there goes their financial problems, that they're able to go in the tournament and compete. And Hiroshi then proceeds to tell him that there's only one catch in that they have to have the Future Industries logo on their uniforms. And then Mako's like, heck, I'll put it on my chest if you want to. And then everybody starts laughing and that. But yeah, we get to see that issue being resolved in that, so they don't have to worry about being out of money in that or having to drop out because they've got the backing of Hiroshi in that. And then going back to Turlock trying to coerce Korra to joining the task force. Here she ends up finding out that she's being invited to this gala that's going to be thrown in her honor, and she attends in that, but Tenzin is still skeptical about Turlock's motives in that for throwing this and that. Because in the back of my mind, he's like, oh, he's trying to get Korra to join the task force and that. And here, Korra ends up seeing Turlock and that, who introduces her to Hiroshi. And Hiroshi tells her that how much the world needs the Avatar and that, and Korra's kind of like uneasy because of her fears and that is in the back of her mind and that. But shortly afterwards, Mako comes with Asami, and looking back at this now, it's really funny because you get to see Asami and that looking at Korra, and you can tell even from here that Asami's at the very least intrigued by Korra and that, and you can tell she definitely wants to be friendly with Korra, even though Korra is kind of like towards her and that. But here Bolin ends up coming into the scene, and that's when Mako breaks the news to Bolin and Korra that Hiroshi is going to be sponsoring them in the sponsoring the fire ferrets in the pro bending tournament, which Bolin is excited in that, but Korra is still kind of out of it yet because of everything that's going on. And to make matters worse for Korra, not only is she dealing with these conflicted feelings that she's having, but Lin comes walking up to her and tells her that, people may think she's special because of this gala, but her Avatar title doesn't impress her and that she hasn't done anything yet to earn it, which Korra feels down about this, and to make that even worse, a group of reporters question her why she isn't taking the initiative of going after Amon and Equalist and that, and you can tell where Korra's getting kind of in a corner, backed up into a corner and that, and the reporters start asking her if she's afraid and that, and she just, after facing this immense pressure and that, she finally bursts out saying that she's not afraid and that, and she finally agrees to join Turlock's task force, which makes Turlock happy in that. And, as we see, being in the task force, her first mission involves a raid on a chi-blocking training camp, which her, Turlock, and the rest of the task force takes care of everything there with ease and that. And while this is going on, while she's doing this task force thing, she's missing a bunch of pro bending practice and that, much to disappointment of Mako and Bolin. You can tell they're feeling kind of down because she's not there to practice with them and that. But here, because of the task force stuff going on, Turlock holds a press conference of how things are going on. And then Korra, and there's another reporter in that asking questions about Amon and that, and then like she did at the gala, she stepped up to the podium and she actually issues an ultimatum to Amon, and she tells him to meet her at Avatar Aang's statue and that, and to prove that he's not afraid of that, and to show how big of a man he is and that. And then that creates a whole different situation in that, and Here, Tenzin finds about this, and he's not happy with this, which Turlock tells Tenzin that he tried to talk her out of it, which you and I both know that's a bunch of BS. But, here, she is at Avatarang statue, and she waits a little bit, and there's no signs of him on, and she thinks that he's a no-show, so she ends up making her way away from there, but she ends up being attacked by the Equalist chi blockers and that, and here comes Amon and that, and here she's like defenseless at this point because the Equalists have her tied up in that, and she's pretty much at the mercy of Amon, but Amon tells her that their meeting is premature, and that if he takes away her bending, it will only make her a martyr, and that it will make the benders fight for a bigger cause. And he ends up telling her that he has plans for her, and that he's gonna save taking away her bending and dealing with her for last. So he and the Equalists and that disappear, and she ends up being unconscious, to which Tenzin finds her and that, and naturally he's worried about her, and he asks her if Mon took her bending away, in which she fire bent, and she saw that her bending was still there, but she ends up bursting into tears and that, and she ends up confiding in Tenzin just how afraid she is over Amon and the situation and that, and Tenzin saying it's okay to be afraid and that, and dealing with your emotions is the first step to bringing balance in that, and much like he did in the last episode, he not only is, and this is what I really like about Tenzin, not only in this book, but in the future books, and as well as the entire series. Not only is he Korra's mentor, but he's also like a father figure to her too, and he really does care about what happens to her and stuff, and I think that's a really important relationship that's especially in the later book that got explored more in that, because Tenzin in the back of his head knows that she's an incarnation of his dad, but it's kind of ironic because she's his dad's past life, but he wants to be like a father figure to her and look out and do what's best for her and that, which I think is pretty awesome in that. But yeah, not only did we get to see Korra and Tenzin's relationship grow as like the mentor, father, student, daughter type thing, but we also get to see Asami and Mako together too in that, which Mako ends up telling Asami about him bullying and his parents. Well, we also get to find out that Asami lost her mother due to a firebender, and here she both ended up telling personal stuff about themselves, and Asami cuddling up to him, and she tells him that she feels safe with him and that, and they had that little moment. But yeah, we're definitely getting to see some character dynamics in this episode, and that's another reason why I like it too. It's not just like we get to see like the major conflict growing in that, but we get to see a little bit more about the characters in that, which I'm not saying it's like the best character development that I've ever seen, but it's definitely something in that. We get to see these characters in that, and I really like how they were able to show Korra being vulnerable, even though she's trying to put on this brave face and that, she is a strong character, but she has flaws too, because she's strong as far as strength and that physical strength, but you can tell where she's a bit emotionally not there yet. Like she has that worry in her mind, and she is fearful, and she is reluctant to admit that she's fearful, and she is afraid that others may think that she's weak because she has fear and that, which it was kind of reckless in her part to rush into things with Amon and that just to try to prove that she's not a chicken or anything. But at the same time, though, I think that's a perfectly normal human reaction for anyone in that kind of situation to prove that they're brave and that. So I totally can't blame her 100% for that. But yeah, we get to see just how things are between the characters in that, and how they're taking the central conflict of this book and that, and but yeah, I really like this episode a lot too, and that's pretty much it I have to say about it. I can pretty much ramble about this, but I'm already approaching almost 20 minutes on this video and that, but I think I pretty much said everything that needed to be said here, all the important parts in that, and Oh, that's so. Instead of talking about and rambling and not talking in circles and that, I think I'm pretty much going to stop this episode here. So, thank you for watching this, and I will see you again next time.